السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. نرحب فيكم في برنامج القانون الرياضي. حابين ننوه في البداية بس إنه راح يكون هناك ترجمة فورية يمكن اختيارها من الخانة الموجودة مكتوب عليها language interpretation. تختارون language العربي بيكون فيه اللي هو ترجمة فورية. نتمنى من الأخوان والأخوات الحضور إن إذا كان في أسئلة ممكن نستخدم خانة Q&A، ويا ريت يكون توجيه الأسئلة باللغة الإنجليزية حتى يتمكن المحاضر من الإجابة عليها في نهاية المحاضرة. Good afternoon and welcome to the Sport Law program. We are deeply honored to have Mr. Olivier Dupree, an attorney at law with wide and rich experience. He represented many clients in sport disputes before sport tribunals such as CAS, FAT, and FIFA chambers. He is also a board member in the Swiss Sports Law Association, a member in the Swiss Bar Association, and a member in Arts Law Center with lots of other professional expertise. Mr. Olivier will be our distinguished speaker today, who will be presenting to us about organizing a global or regional sport event, insight into Eurofootball, its bidding process, the organization agreement, and stadium agreement. We are sure that your respected presence and professional expertise, Mr. Olivier, will enhance the experience of all participants. Mr. Olivier, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much for your nice word and introduction. Hello everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be with you today and to talk about the organization of a major sport event and major football event. Thank you very much for the Bahrain Football Association for the kind of invitation today. The presentation will be divided in 5 sections. We'll start with a small introduction. Then I will explain and show a little bit the complex system of contractual arrangement that has to be done in connection with organization of big event. A few words about the bidding procedures, and then we will finish the presentation with the presentation of the main topic related to organization agreement. At the end of the presentation, we'll have time for Q&A session, as just mentioned. As an introduction, what I will say today is a general presentation, and of course, the organization of a major sport event can depend on the different structure put in place. It's not always the same. It depends also of the kind of federation. If we talk about FIFA or UEFA, which are based in Switzerland, or if you have other big organization, association, federation based abroad, the structure might be a little bit different. Of course, it depends also of the location, because you will have to choose an applicable law, but depending of the location, there are other laws that can apply, public law, of course. So there will be different laws, but as a general statement, we can say that what we'll talk today is an explanation of the general principle and general concepts that are applicable here. But what we say for global event, major event, is also applicable for smaller sport event. The second slide is a slide for which I'm quite proud of, because I'm not an IT specialist and it took me some time to prepare it, but I hope you can see it, and you can see how many stakeholders, actors in the sports world are involved in a big sport event. The core things is the staging a contract that you will see in the middle of the slides. It's the organization agreement between the federation and the host country. That could be a national association or an organizational committee. It depends the kind of structure the local organizer wants to put in place. Then in terms of big commercial deals, we talk about mainly the sponsorship contract and the broadcasting, the TV rights agreements. But in addition to this big contract, you have all other contracts that are necessary to deal and conclude in respect of the organization of the event. You can conclude a marketing agency contract to sell the rights. You will have different kind of licenses to have to produce services and product in connection with the event. The host will conclude stadium contract with the stadium owners, and there will be a lot of different contracts with landlords and constructors, depending of the kind of infrastructure you will need for the temporary periods related to the event. On top of that, it is very important to have also good insurance deals put in place. The insurance contracts are usually concluded by the host, but the federation can also decide to conclude different insurance to protect against problems that can arise for themselves or their member, the teams taking place to the competitions. I will not go into the details of this all this contract. I will come back a little bit later with the main element that you can see in the staging contract and in stadium agreement. Concerning the bidding procedures, when we talk about major sport event, the federation wants or sometimes has to do bidding procedures to find the most appropriate host for the competition. The timeline is usually divided in two phases. The full process takes, depending of the event, but usually it's between 5 to 7 years before the event. At this stage, we can divide the two phases. The first phases last 8-10 months, and it starts with the distribution of the requirements. Then people interested can submit a bid dossier, and the federation at the end of this phase decide to select a bidder. A limited number of bidders, and then in the phase 2 you start having discussion with the bidders, try to start negotiation. You will show the main contract that the bidder will need to countersign. The federation will start making some site visits to see what is really the situation of the country, what is the situation in terms of stadium, in terms of infrastructure, to have a better understanding of the situation, if the dossier is realistic or not. And the bidder will submit another bid dossier for this phase 2. And at the end of the process, the federation is selecting the host association. For instance, the next Euro 2028, where the UEFA has to choose the host, will be the first phase. I think it's in March this year, where the bidder can put a dossier and say that they are interested to organize the event, and the host will be selected by September next year. What we say usually in terms of the bid requirement is that the host country provide the stage, and the federation, usually we say here UEFA or FIFA, brings the parties. It's a bit a general split of the roles, but it's a good resume of the requirements. In terms of fundamental provision, when we are in the bid process, the split of the responsibilities between the host association and the federation is the following. The host association shall comply with stadia requirements, which are very detailed. We'll come back on that later. The host association has to develop and implement a clear safety and security concept. And now with this pandemic and with this COVID situation, host association has additional challenges, and they need to think about this COVID situation by including this element in their concept. Another point which is really important is the liaison with the government of the host country, and even more than the liaison is really a close cooperation and support of the government. And the host association shall support the federation in all key elements like the ticketing, the accreditation, the promotion of the event, all the transportation, the infrastructure, the accommodations, a lot of different topics to be think about, and that will be concerning the role of the federation. Its role is to make the strategic decision regarding all the aspects of the event, except the safety and security that is in the hands of the host association. The federation will take care of all competition aspects, really the technical things, but the sports and competition aspect, how the format of the event will be, what will be the schedule of the matches, and so on. They have quite a full discretion about that, and they have the possibility to even adjust the format after the word of the competition. The federation will coordinate with the participating member of the association, so their own member. They have to coordinate with the teams taking part of the event. The federation will have the right, basically, to exploit all commercial rights, including marketing, media rights, sponsors. So they will keep quasi all the revenue of the event. The responsibility of the federation to coordinate everything with the commercial partner and lots of different partners, as we have just seen in the chart. It's a big job, because there are a lot of different partners, and you have to be sure that everything makes sense. And when you negotiate contract with sponsor, you need to know what is mentioned in the TV rights to make it something coherent, and to avoid creating problems between the partners. And at the end, they have also to develop and implement all operational concepts of the event. The condition of the bid dossier, a lot of different conditions. To start with the general condition, the host shall show its motivation to organize a big event and a kind of vision. They can show also what kind of experience they have in the past to organize events of such scope. You show normally the public support, if possible, if you can organize some elections, or identify if you have the support of the public with you, if the people want to have a big event in their country or not, and show the federation if you have organized maybe other than sport event, but big event in the past or at the same period. It's important to have also an idea about the event that can take place at the same time. Political support, as mentioned, is really key, because if you don't have it, it will make really the organization and the implementation of the event very complicated. As other condition, of course, we're talking about law. The legal condition, I've listed a few ones. To start with, one important one is the intellectual property. It's clear that for each event, the federation and the host country have to protect the rights, the IP rights, to then sell them and license them to the partners, TV, and of course sponsors. You have to think about all the brands, copyrights, music rights, mascot, and so on. And when we talk about IP, so it's a protection of the rights against what? Against also potential ambush marketing. I guess you all know what ambush marketing is. It's basically where brands take advantages of the event by creating the impression that you have a kind of commercial association or connection with the event, but actually you have no official link or no official contract or sponsorship deal in place with the event. So that's basically the ambush marketing. You have different kind of ambush marketing. You can have the ambush by association, is basically what I said, when you have a non-sponsored brand almost pass itself off as an official sponsor of the competition. You can have also ambush by intrusions. It's another thing, another kind of ambush marketing, which involve brands gaining exposure at the event itself. It's the past, brands have been present on site or through the grounds of handies or freebies to spectator, or placing a big sign at the venue or close to the venue. Here you can see that there was some example of ambush marketing during a World Cup, where you had people wearing orange clothes, which are the symbol of a Dutch beer, which was the competitor of the official beer, and they were doing this ambush even during a game in the stadium itself. So that's an example of ambush marketing. On the top of the slides, you can see also another example. It's basically when you have an opportunistic advertising. Here you can see that this was a slogan when the London 2012 Olympic Games took place. So it was showed by Paddy Power, a company in the street in London, making a logo, like thinking that they were talking about the Olympic Games, but actually they were promoting a very small race in a village called also London, but in France. So people thought that it was connected with the Olympic Games, but it was not the case. And it was well done, and the IOC were not able to remove this opportunistic advertisement. You have also now the digital ambush marketing, which is really new and also difficult to fight. When we talk about fighting ambush marketing, you have different tools. Of course, you have the IP rights, so it's the trademark and so on that you are registered to protect the mark, your rights. You can have also the possibility to rely on the different unfair competition law, which can protect you against unfair competition acts made by competitors or non-competitors. You have also the different contract you put in place by giving or receiving exclusivity with sponsor, with the public authorities. When you want to get some public concession, that's also a possibility to protect yourself The property rights also with the owner, to be sure that when you are in a specific area, you control this area, also with landlords, to be sure that unauthorized people cannot enter or cannot do what they want to do in terms of ambush actions. It's not very frequent, but sometimes also the host country is able to create a special law to prevent ambush marketing. I think it was the case in South Africa. It was not the case in Switzerland, but we considered that unfair competition law and IP rights were sufficient to protect the organizer and the federation. Over legal conditions, custom and foreign exchange, need to discuss with the host and the country how to make sure that you have the possibility to bring some materials in the country without having too many administrative problems. The ticketing, it's also an important part. Usually it depends actually. The host can be entitled to consideration in the form of the ticket sales revenues, but it's not always the same. Sometimes there is just no consideration and the ticketing revenues is kept by the umbrella association, by the federation. In terms of immigration, visa, work permit, also the host bidder needs to show what is the situation with immigration, with the possibility of the athlete, of the team's member, of the worker, and so on, to come to the country and to see if they can help easily or not with the pre-organization obligation of the event. Now, again, with COVID, it brings you even new complex problems in connection with the entries of people into the country. We have all seen in tennis the Djokovic case, which showed that problems can come up in connection with sport event. And that will be the case also for football players, if they are vaccinated or not, if they are exempted from vaccination or not. What happened with the coaches, with all people on pitch or out of the pitch. So that's a kind of new element to be taken into account when you need to prepare the organization in your bid dossier. The same for employment law, show how it is possible to hire people for long-term or short-term period, just for the event or the months before the event. And finally, same topic in connection with doping. Usually it's well regulated by the international codes and so on, but you need to show that in your country also the anti-doping regulations are well implemented, and that there will be no discrepancy between the international standard and what will take place, what will happen in the country hosting the event. Legal condition with respect to stadia, stadium, and other event facilities. To start with the stadium requirements. For each event, the federation will decide quite at an early stage, a very early stage, the number of stadium which is necessary to organize properly the event. Define also the stadium capacity, the parking, the lighting, to be sure that it's really in line with the international standard. The technology, that's something developing so fast. So you need to be sure that the technology that will be put in the stadium is complying with the expectation of the federation and the expectation of the stadium. I have been involved in a number of contract concerning the boards in the stadium and the new technology, the new LED technology that is used for the boards in the stadium to show the message of the sponsor, interesting technology that can be used by now the federation, where you can see, for instance, the message in English if you're based in the UK, but if you're in China, you can say the same sponsor logo, but in Chinese and so on. That's really interesting and developing so fast. Another important notion is the clean stadium notion, clean stadium principle. It will be very important for the organizer to be sure that the stadiums are clean, in the sense that there is no sign of sponsor or owner or namings of stadium which are not connected with the event. So even if the owner has sold the name of the stadium to a big company for his team, but if the stadium is used for a World Cup or a Euro, you need to be sure that all signs connected with that brand are removed, to be sure that there will be no conflict with the official sponsor that can be competitor of this naming or brand usually present in the stadium. Picture of stadium to be built. Technical and space requirements, media requirements. Of course, a lot of people are coming for the event for a short period of time. So you need to be sure that the media, everybody are welcome and in good position to exercise their job and to broadcast the event. So you have to rent, sometimes temporary basis, a big place for the international broadcasting center, for instance. Safety and security requirements, as mentioned, it's in the hands of the host, which is really obliged to think about that and show the federation what is their concept and to comply with high standard of security and safety. Main event facility for the sponsor, for the people, the spectators. It can be also a special area where you can see the games on screens, hospitality areas, a lot of different facilities. Also, of course, airports and transport facilities. The stadium are potentially already existent, or they have to be refurbished, or simply have to be built. So it's important in the bid dossier that the host explain in detail what will be the cost, the financing, the guarantees with respect to the new stadium, the planning, to be sure that it will be available and not just for the event, but usually well in advance, to be sure that you can organize test events and that will be satisfying for the federation and the quality expected for a big event. A few words about the stadium agreement. It's something I like very much, because you have a mix of notion coming up here with something very local and with some requirements put by federation which are not locally present. So sometimes you need to think of being creative, but also understand the culture, understand the situation. But at the same time, the federation have to be sure that high standards are present and the stadium will be as expected in terms of quality, vision, and equipment. So the stadium agreement will contain a few points. It will mention that it's, of course, to be used for sport events, but you need to be sure that the day before, the week before, the month before, there will be no major rock concert that can destroy the pitch. We have seen example in the past. As mentioned, it should be in advance available, usually at least 2 years. It's good if the year before, for instance, you can organize a test event with top teams and see if it's ready to be operational for the event or not, and adjust before the event. Free of advertising, that's the clean principle concept. Safety requirements, very detailed in stadium agreement. There will be a waiver of any type of own use or exploitation. Really, it's important that for a certain period of time, an exclusivity is given to the host association and the federation for the event, and it's not possible for the team, for instance, usually playing in that stadium, to come to train and make games. Change of ownership, it will be also important for the parties to be sure that the owner of the stadium won't sell it, or if it does, that the new owner is fully aware of this stadium agreement and fully ready to comply and take over this stadium agreement. Insurance policies, again, important to have insurance coverage the satisfaction of the organizer, to be sure that if something happens, whatever damage comes, insurance will be there to cover and pay and make things possible to redo, refurbish, renovate the stadium on time. Or if something happened during the event, of course, the insurance should pay and avoid having the host country being in the middle of a mess and being bankrupt for whatever problem arising at the stadium. The last point is the applicable law. That's an interesting provision, because usually, if I take the example of UEFA or FIFA, which are based in Switzerland, we decide to put the Swiss law as the applicable law, even if the stadium is not based in Switzerland. So it means that you have a contract specifying a foreign law for a building, for a sport infrastructure which is based abroad, which is not something very standard, but that's how it is in sports even. And then, of course, as mentioned at the beginning, even if we say that that Swiss law is applicable, for instance, there will be always the public law, the local public law that can come over and put some restriction or changes. I've been asked several times, for instance, to check the possibility to have a different product or drinks sold in the stadium. For instance, alcohol, is it something that you can sell, distribute in the stadium? A lot of countries does not allow that. It's possible on the Swiss law, but even if you say that, for instance, beer can be distributed in the stadium because it's a big sponsor of the event, can happen that the local laws, as you know, does not allow that, and you have to think about that. It's not only the element mentioned in the stadium agreement that at the end can apply, but you have different local laws that can come over. Accommodation, I mentioned that also briefly, but in the bid dossier and procedures, you have to explain what is the capacity that you will have in your country to welcome people, Is it close or not to the stadium? What kind of variety? You cannot have only luxury hotel. You have a range of different kind of hotel for the referees, for the spectators, for the players, for the team, for the workers. Also a different price level range. The same for the training center. You need to be sure that people and the teams and the player can train, can be ready for the games. Referees hotel, doping control doctors hotel, and all again things related to COVID situation. Again, also the general infrastructure. It's more than a detail here. You need to be sure that the transport facilities, the airports, the motorway, and everything are ready to welcome a lot of people in the countries. Telecommunication, medical facilities. Again, the new challenges coming from the COVID situation and the anti-doping infrastructure. Concerning the marketing and the media rights, that's the big piece of the cake. It's the most significant source of revenues. Who is the holder of the rights? Usually it's the umbrella association, the federation that control the marketing and the media rights. Marketing rights means the rights to appoint sponsor, to grant license, to have a service provider to exploit these rights, and the media rights, TV rights, and not only TV, of course, now, but in the recent years, you have seen all the development. When I started, we were discussing only about selling broadcasting rights concerning TV, and then also you included the radio, but now it's all about the mobile and new technology. And we'll see in the future, other things will come up. So you need to also think about that, because when you start the process, you are like 5, 6, sometimes 8 years before the event. And you all know that in 8 years, a lot of things can happen in technology. So you need to anticipate that and maybe think about what will happen with the new rights coming in that world, who will be the owner of the rights, and to already mention that in the contractual discussion. Marketing by host association and host cities. Of course, the host has the right to communicate, and the cities also. So you need to define what is the limit between the host marketing and the hidden global marketing. Clean site principle, I mentioned that already, and this possibility to ask the owner of the site to remove all brands, all boards which are linked to the normal standard exploitation, but not connected with the event itself. That's another example of ambush marketing I mentioned already, but it's important in the bid dossier to discuss how the host will take care of that, and with what kind of support of the federation. In sponsorship contract, had quite a number of experience, and you can see that FIFA, for instance, is ready to help more the sponsor against ambush marketing if the sponsor is a big one. If the competition is not that important or the sponsor is not that important, maybe the organizer, the association will not help the sponsor that much in fighting against ambush. Official websites and fan zone. This is also something important. We have seen in the past that some hosts, organizer made promise to the federation saying that they will be ready to do a big fan zone and zone for sponsor in very attractive area. Of course, if terrorist attack or pandemic issues come up and they need to close the zone, is something different. But sometimes we have seen in the past that big promises were made to say that, for instance, close to the Tour Eiffel or the Champ de Mars, big fan zone will and sponsor zone will be possible. And at the end, between the award of the event and the event itself, there was a political changes, and the new politicians in place said that it was no longer possible. And so sometimes you have politics changing in the meantime, and there will be an impact on these conditions and promise made in the bid dossier. Finance, again, revenues from the sale of tickets is a significant source of income. Here I put for the federation because at the end they will try to control that. As mentioned, the host association can be paid for the organization, but it's not always the case, and there is no rules. It depends also about the new situation. In the past, maybe more countries were willing to organize or were in position to organize big events, and maybe the federation were in better position to negotiate. Now, especially for the Olympic Games, we have seen that it's more and more difficult to find host city, host country. So maybe the host will get a bigger piece of the cake than before. Each time it's a bit different. That's an important slide. It's connected with the political support that the host shall have to organize the event. There are here I listed 10 type of guarantee: the general government support, the protection of IP, the customs, visa and working permit, foreign exchange, import money, financing of stadium, hotel infrastructure, supporting of promotional activities, safety and security, and tax exemption authorities. It summarizes a little bit the points we discussed so far, but on top of that, the host has to submit guarantees saying that it's not only a best effort clause, but it will be something that you have to deliver, and part of the legal job is at the very beginning to see if this kind of guarantees are legal, if this kind of guarantee are possible in the country, because sometimes it's just not possible for legal reason or other reason. But it's a long process in the bid process, where there is an exchange between the federation and the bidders about this. The federation wants to impose all this guarantee, and it's not always easy for the host bidder to submit them. So sometimes because the law does not allow them to submit such guarantee, but sometimes it's just because from an economical point of view or from a political point of view, it's not possible to obtain that. And of course, when you have just one host, one country organizing the event, maybe it's easier to get this guarantee from a political point of view, especially because you will have a big major event. You can capitalize on that. You have revenues coming from the touristic actions. You have an exposure worldwide, and you are maybe ready to make some compromise But by contrary, like for the last Euro, when you had 13 different countries and some country hosting just two games, for instance, at that moment, maybe the country is not really only for 2 games to make some compromise and adjustment to their visa or customs policies and so on. So the situation can be really different. That was for the bid requirements phase 1. In phase 2, at the end of the process, you have started to negotiate already a lot of different points. You have submitted your dossier and you have a questionnaire when the federation is asking a lot of things. You need to make a clear business plan and a clear response to that questionnaire. And you need to execute already the major contract, meaning the host bidder shall be ready to sign the staging agreement, the airport agreements, the host city agreements, and the stadium agreements. That's the 4 kind of agreement that are really key for the federation to see if the host is ready to accept these conditions. And at the end of the process, when they elect the host, the agreement is ready to be signed, and they can start working on the event and not really start negotiating, because it can last months or years, and at the end it doesn't make sense. So you have a process where the bidder are aware of the clear conditions and they receive draft agreement, and they should be ready to sign them when they are elected. If they are elected at the end of the process, they sign already this agreement. And the federation, when there is the word of the event, they simply countersign the agreements. The last point is the organization agreement. I wanted to list a couple of points that are key to know when you have to discuss and review an organization agreement. The name of the parties, it's the umbrella association, which could be FIFA or UEFA or whatever big association, and the host. The host is sometimes the host member, the host national association, football association, but it can be also a local committee. And sometimes you have a committee for the bidding process, and then it is converted or transferred to the local national association when really the event is awarded. So the parties can change, and it's not always the same structure put in place. There are some tax and corporate discussion to be solved when you decide which kind of entity will countersign the organization agreement. And the other selected issues to be think about when you negotiate an organization agreement is, of course, first point, the applicable law. And I put Swiss law because this presentation is highly inspired by what happened with the World Cup and the Euro. But most of the time, and it's also for a lot of different sports, not only football, but as you may know, a lot of international federations are based in Switzerland, which means that for all big contracts, sponsor contracts, stadium we've seen, but also, of course, organization agreement, staging agreement, Swiss law is used. It's a good law in the sense that it's also quite flexible. You don't have in Swiss law provision, legal provision governing, describing in detail what is an organization agreement, what is a sponsor agreement. So all these agreements are could be considered for the organization agreement, for instance, as a kind of work contract, enterprise contract, because you have to deliver something. The outcome of the host is key. So you attend the performance, and so you can be inspired by the law governing the work contract, but everything is not, of course, in the law. And you have to draft this kind of organization agreement in details, because if there is nothing concerning a certain topic in the agreement, maybe you have difficulties to understand and to know what was the intention of the party. So that's why the organization agreements are drafting in a very detailed way, with schedules detailing the right of obligation, but all the technical aspects we discussed this morning. And there is a provision saying that the host is being granted the right and the obligation to realize the sport event, potentially also the consideration granted to the host to organize it. Big and important clause is the financial issues. You need to, so we discussed already the ticket revenues, but it's all about describing who has to bear the cost entailed by the organization and the realization of the sport event, and which party must bear which additional financial charges. So you have a split of all elements and who bears what, but also new problems can come up and additional charges can come up. So you need to define already who will pay what. That's really key. For the host association, they will bear all the costs in accordance with the list of requirements and given by the federation, by FIFA, and then FIFA will usually bear some cost in connection with the preparation of the event and for the participation of the national teams. There are some travel costs for the delegation. There are some training costs and some additional costs, all detailed in the regulation. The member association, the teams taking place to the event shall bear themselves some costs, and they shall get also some clear insurance coverage for themselves. So there is a split of the financial issues to be really detailed in the contract. There will be a provision detailing also the right exploitation, about what we discussed already, and all the organizational aspects and supervision of the preparatory work will be the object of provision in the organization agreement. Of course, even if what we call the umbrella association transfer the organization of the sport event to the host, this does not mean that the federation backs out entirely from the preparation and realization of the event. Instead, the FIFA or UEFA will retain certain power of high-level management, decision-making, and monitoring. It's really important for them to control what happened and to get all reporting and breakdowns for the preparation during the event and post event. The schedule and all, and even I would say now it's getting even more important to specify in the contract what happened in terms of problems with the timing, can be in the preparation, can be for the event itself, if there is an obligation to postpone or to cancel the event. We have all seen these topics with the COVID. What happened with the decision to postpone or simply cancel an event. Some people were, some entities were well covered by insurance, so the decision was easier. The force majeure concept is different between the different regulations, so it's not always the same. And even in Switzerland, it was depending on how contracts were drafted. So I guess we all had interesting experience with the COVID, looking into consequences, contractual consequences, and having a lot of different outcomes with people being forced to pay everything or being in position to simply postpone and cancel even without any obligation to pay anything. So the drafting of the contract is really important, and to the discussion, the good relationship between the parties is really key also, to adjust and decide to simply postpone and what to do with force majeure event or over unexpected event. The technical requirements and safety measure, again, here it's what we discussed. The contract will decide number of stadium, hotel, safety concept, and so on. The governmental confirmations, as mentioned above, it's really key to get the confirmation of the politicians, authorities, that they are ready to welcome the event and make everything possible to do a great event. Duty to cooperate, to coordinate. I refer to my chart at the beginning of the presentation. There are lots of different partners, so you need to be sure that everything is well coordinated, and it's the job of the host, but it's more the job of the federation that needs to ensure that everything is well coordinated. Reputation management, it can happen that the host or the association had some public, how to phrase that, but reputational issues with corruption and so on. We have seen that in football, but in other sports. So the organization agreement also needs to, if possible, anticipate this and put a process in place to solve and protect the interests of the event, and to solve this problem in the best way possible. Tax aspect, that's an important point too. Regularly, organization agreement, staging agreement will include a provision pursuant to which all taxes incurred must be borne by the host. So it's usually a clause which is sometimes difficult to understand or difficult to assess, but it's usually the case. And ideally also, sometimes a tax ruling can be requested, meaning that the host shall go to the tax authorities and get some information about how athletes will be taxed, how services will be taxed, how different elements will be taxed, to anticipate tax issues. Insurance aspect, as mentioned, that should be an issue to be covered by the host, but also the federation and the national association participating to the event. At the end, of course, in addition to the applicable law, there is the dispute settlement process. Need to know where to go if you have some claims. We used to have an arbitration clause by providing also the competence of the TAS, of the CAS, the Court of Arbitration for Sports, in Switzerland, in Lausanne. It's not always the case, but it's usually the case with a clear dispute settlement process specified in the organization agreement. So that was basically the main topic I wanted to raise today and to explain to you. I see that there are some Q&A and questions. I will try to go through it. Don't hesitate to ask additional question. I see one saying why we suppose inevitably that the Swiss law is the applicable law. It's not inevitable. It's usually the case because big events are organized by the international federation like FIFA or UEFA, which are based in Switzerland. Of course, if it is an Asian event, or if there is no connection with Switzerland, applicable law will not be should not be a Swiss law. How we can pass the national law, especially the obligatory rules. It depends what kind of rules we are talking about. If there are some laws like public laws that can be mandatory, even if we have to apply Swiss law. Swiss law recognize international public order, and some national laws can have this consideration, can be considered as being part of this international public order, and we need to comply with this. So it's really on case-by-case basis, and if there's some mandatory law, and it can happen also with the stadium agreement or lease agreement. It's not because we say that Swiss law is applicable that at some point we can disregard the national law about the lease or property rights, for instance. Is there a set number of sponsors? Yes and no, in the sense that it depends. It depends of the event, and especially the federation. It's a commercial discussion. It depends. They like to give exclusivity and a certain number, meaning also a certain number, limited number of sponsors to ensure visibility for this big sponsor. But for secondary sponsor, right now I'm negotiating something for a big event on behalf of sponsor, and that was one of the questions, saying, can we ask the organizer to limit the number of sponsors? And that was not accepted. So it's really depending of the commercial concept put in place by the organizer, by the umbrella association, but it's more a commercial discussion more than a legal. Who is responsible for having tickets on the black market for the tournament? That's a good question. Usually it's the host that has to really take care of that. Then the federation, we help also to fight against black market or unauthorized sales of tickets. or unauthorized resale of tickets, because it's important to know who will be in the stadium. So it's not only about an economical element, but it's about safety element, and the terms and condition of the ticketing sale is very detailed and clear, and normally it's nominative tickets. So on ground, the host association or host city and so on will need to take care of this fight against black market, but the federation will delegate also some people on the ground and principle to fight not only about ambush, but about black market too. What does staging agreement means? Staging agreement is meant as a synonym of organization agreement. So it's the contract to be concluded between the umbrella association, the FIFA and so on, and the host, the host entity. I don't know if you have other questions.
I think that was very clear, Mr. Olivier. And at the end, actually, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Olivier, for such an enlightening and entertaining presentation on organizing a global or regional sport event. We appreciate having such an important topic clarified by sharing your valuable knowledge with all participants. It was of a great pleasure having you with us today, Mr. Olivier Dupré. And once again, on behalf of Bahrain Football Association and everyone here today, thank you very much for being our distinguished speaker in the Sport Law program. And the last words are yours.
Thank you again for the invitation, and yeah, that was my pleasure.
And we hope the next meeting is man-to-man in Bahrain.
I will be happy to come and visit you for sure.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.